It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Newlyweds, ooh la la. I mean, they call this the honeymoon period.
That's exactly
And this
right.
is where, it's driven primarily in the beginning, it's driven by the passion
That's right.
of the marriage. But here's what's funny to me is that you find out that marriage is all about passion, and you find out, man, there's a lot of people, they blow it up in the first 2 years. So maybe
Exactly
that
right.
passion wasn't driving things as much as they like. And then, Bo, I like to pick on the fact that we did shows. We did quite a few
did.
shows in the past where you were, I don't want to say the butt of the joke, but you were definitely part of the content structure.
The absolute butt of the
Because
joke.
we did a show April 27th of 2012. Why is that date so important?
Yeah, that was just a few weeks before I got married back in 2012. And I'm a financial guy.
Love, marriage, and finance.
I had designations, I had degrees. I just knew the way that money was going to work in my marriage. And so I wanted to share all the things I knew with our wonderful audience out there.
So then fast forward a year later, June 14th of 2013. Well, listen to this title. So the first one was Love, Marriage, and Finances. The second, after you've had your first 1 year anniversary, we did a show, Marriage, an Education. Do you hear how that title changed? Obviously, you thought you had things figured out, and then you kind of got an education in that first year of marriage.
If you're someone who's new to the show, or maybe you weren't listening to it 6 or 7 years ago, we're actually going to put a link to both of those shows in the description. Go check that out, and you can actually listen to both of those shows.
So I made the rabbit ears for all those listening out there in podcast terms. I held up the rabbit ears because we do talk about the passion, the heat that's going on in the honeymoon, and that's great initially. But we got to bring down, because Bo, you had a great visualization. We got to bring that temperature down to a simmer.
That's
so
right.
it's still, we keep the marriage hot, but you don't want the contents boiling over to where there's nothing left at the end of the day. So we kind of want to jump into this because this passion that doesn't actually turn into a simmer, where you don't get beyond just the physical stuff you have going on and you can't figure out that I actually love and care and there's other parts of this marriage that I love. Daniel's divorce statistics, or let me say about it, Daniel's divorce statistics. We do have that, we got Halloween coming up, so you can see Daniel is going to dress up as the Grim Reaper, obviously.
For sure. We have these wonderful things. We're talking about marriage, and Daniel's thought, well, I think if we're going to talk about marriage, I ought to just put in their divorce stats. We're all through this show, so we're going to let him own that portion of it and talk about at each stage how the severance of marriage actually plays out.
So here's the first 2 years of marriage. We knew this. I mean, Bo, you and I have talked. My first 2 years of marriage were some of the hardest. And you shared the same thing.
The second year of marriage was by far, even to today, the single hardest year of marriage for us.
And that makes sense, because in the first 2 years of marriage, I mean, you're trying to figure a lot of stuff out. But the stats kind of prove this point, that it is a tough transition period. Year 2 of your marriage, 10% of marriages, this is the highest year of divorces, 10% of marriages just fall off in year 2.
And so what that tells me is that clearly there's not enough, if it's just passion, just heat, just excitement. There has to be something more to get it to move past that stage.
So let's talk about traps to avoid. If we can help people avoid some of the mistakes that other people that are in the newlywed phase avoid, let's get in this. And this is an easy one. This is understandable how this causes trouble. The first one is spending like you are still single.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because you're not. Now, it's not just about you and what you do and the things you have going on. You have to factor in the other human being that is going on this journey with you.
Now look, I'm nowhere near the newlywed phase. You're going to find out which phase I am, because I just had my wedding anniversary like a week and a half ago. But we were out this was after church. We were out with another couple, kids around and everything. And then the wife, because everybody knows I'm in the financial field. They know I'm the money guy. And they're like, Brian, so let me ask you a question. Would you go out and buy a classic car without
that's a landmine.
Consulting without consulting your spouse? And I knew, by the way, because I know what's sitting in their driveway. But this couple that has been married, where the husband has been married long enough, he should know better. He had bought a classic car.
Right.
And didn't consult his spouse, and it was obviously causing some animosity.
And here's the thing. It's not a permission thing, right? It's not a, oh, hey, can I go do this? It's a, hey, this is kind of our money. Let's talk about this. Is this something that we both are okay with?
I was smart enough. I deflected.
Sure.
I said, guys.
Wise man.
I don't know. That's not something we really talk about. But, but the true answer, now that they're not sitting across the table from me looking, is that you guys need to set up. You need to have conversations and boundaries on what the thresholds are on what you can spend without consulting the other one. Now, Bo, I'll pick on you again. Back when we did that show in 2012, you thought that number.
Yeah, I was smart enough. I knew there had to be a number.
So what was your number back in 2012?
I thought when my wife and I got married, if either one of us wanted to spend more than $40, we should just check in with the other.
When Bo told me that stat, I said, by the way, you realize your wife's shampoo probably costs more, and there's no way she's calling you every time she buys a new jug of shampoo.
I did not realize that shampoo cost that much because my swab was like $1.50.
Your shampoo, you pay $1.99. And you
use
get
that for a whole
52
year.
ounces with a pump top on top there. It doesn't work that way for our wives, at least.
That's right.
We won't stereotype anymore. I did put in here. I wanted to share my own knowledge. First, we had like a $200 rule in my marriage. Probably in the last few years, that number's been pushed up to $500 to $600. Sure. So I realized this has to be an individual decision on what those spending. And it's not a limit. It's more of just, hey, if we cross this threshold, I just need to keep my partner, my love of my life, just in the communication loop.
And don't mishear this, because here's what I don't want the spouse out there to take this podcast and to go say, listen, see, they told you can't spend this much without asking me for it. It's not about permission. It's just about respect and making sure you're on the same page.
That's the second point. An indicators of success, on just
traps
to avoid is just letting single debt steal your married happiness.
Again, this is another one. Communication is key. If you made some bad decisions in your previous life, maybe you racked up some debt, maybe you have some credit card debt, that's okay. That happens to people. Don't go into the marriage without letting your significant other know about that.
Yeah.
That matters, because what can happen is that thing that was so cumbersome to you, when you bring another human being into that, now it becomes cumbersome for both of you guys. And so you need to have an understanding on how you guys as a household are going to attack that together.
Yeah, because you two have become one. That debt that was maybe your spouse's has now it's come into your life.
Yeah.
So y'all got to create a plan together. Come together to figure out how to turn that single debt into something that y'all are attacking. Here's the next one: was not realizing that in addition to my financial goals, you now have our financial goals. You're starting to notice a theme here. Exactly. There really is. When two become one, you're starting to realize a lot of things that you might have been doing independently are now turned into something y'all are doing as a group. So don't lose your identity, but you are definitely not a lone wolf anymore. You've got another player in this game.
Now, it does. Again, you said it's not about just foregoing all of your goals, but it's about understanding there's more than just your goals.
And then this is the last one that we had during this section, was only thinking about right now. And it's when you're in this happy, passionate phase, you're probably thinking about, man, we can afford, now that we've taken two incomes and we brought them into one. Yeah. Man, we can. There's a lot of things we can start doing here. We can buy new cars. We can get a dream house. You can start doing all kind of things, but you have to be careful. Measure twice, cut once on making sure that lifestyle is not pushing up to where it's causing you a lot of long-term issues.
Just because you can does not mean that you should. We hear this all the time, and we've even counseled young couples on this. Oh, well, I can afford anything 1 month at a time. It's just $200, $300 a month. We can afford that. That may not be the case. Make sure you're prioritizing what those future goals should be.
Yeah, you do need it. I know it's hard, especially when you're first starting out, to think long term, but a little goes a long way. And that's what I tell people, is just make sure that y'all are creating a plan together so that you are setting some money aside for yourself. So let's talk about indicators of success. We just went through the negative side, which were traps to avoid. Let's go now, pivot and go to the positive side. These are some of the indicators of success. Is that first, have you combined your checking account?
Yeah, again,
this isn't controversial.
This is super controversial, because a lot of folks are going to write and say, oh, no, we're separate. I do mine, he does his, she does hers, whatever. What a combined account shows is that you guys have the ability and the propensity to make decisions together. Don't mishear us that we are suggesting you should combine everything. Our opinion is that you should, but that's not prescriptive, but you should be able to work together commonly on common accounts, common goals.
Now, I do give a disclaimer because I want to give, because I know there's that not everybody's created, you don't all have the same situations. There are some unique circumstances that can remain separated. That's inherited property. Some of you might have some premarital property that needs to stay separated. Older marriage with complications like you have children from other marriages and things like that. However, for most marriages, exactly what Bo said, since you literally have two become one, just to save yourself a lot of animosity, resentment, and just to keep communication going, I do like the thought of pushing your different separate columns of assets into one is going to do a lot of good and create it. Really, there's a reason we call this an indicator of success. The second thing I had was, if this is something I can tell to people who are running separate, if you're not going to have combined accounts, by God, you better create a household budget that's combined. You have to be working off the same sheet music.
I think if you're going to be good with money, you have to practice making good decisions with money. Now, this is a telling question. I'm asking on purpose. It's out of question. Do you budget right now?
No,
right?
I don't have. I have a great cash management plan, right. But budgeting is one of those, and this is why we put it in the Newlywed section, is because this is something you have to practice. How do you get good at shooting free throws? You shoot free throws over and over again, so you get really good muscle memory. It's the same thing with the way you use your finances and cash flow. So in the beginning, I have had budgets. I don't like the budget, but I have definitely in my lifetime done budgeting. But as you get older, and you'll see this, guys, as you mature with your money, you will create cash management plans, which effectively work like a budget, where it's just your money has every dollar in your army of dollar bills has a purpose, and automatically through automation will go into savings towards paying down your debt early. Everything just kind of already has a place and it fulfills that. But in the beginning, you kind of have to know where every dollar is going so you can have a very good, effective plan.
I just think about it, when my wife and I sat down, if she didn't want me to know that she spent more than $40 on shampoo, and she would have said, oh, well, we're not going to do a budget, because that just wouldn't be setting us up for success. So it lays it all out so you can have a good conversation around that.
So that leads to, because you're talking about you and your wife talking about the shampoo. Here's the next point, indicator of success is, have you had that first, what we have and where it's at meeting? This is, I picked on you because I think you said you were going to do this on the plane trip to your honeymoon. You thought y'all were going to be having this meeting.
I mean, we all know what happens on the honeymoon. I thought this was going to be the thing that got her going, right? I thought this was going to be the thing that really got her excited.
Let's talk about what we're going to spend on our marriage. Man, nothing gets the ladies and the spouses working. The non-financial partner is definitely going to love this meeting.
And so obviously that didn't quite go the way I thought. So what I did is I said, hey, after the honeymoon, we'll talk about this some other time. But it is important. You guys need to lay out as a couple, hey, here's all the things we have. Here are the good things. I saved this much money. I have these assets. I have this whatever. But also, hey, I do have credit card debt, or I do have student loans, or I do have this. And even more so, if one of the spouses is the one who primarily handles the finances, because we see that all the time. It's not gender specific, by the way. It's not always the worker.
No, it's not the one that even makes all the money. You're exactly right.
But if one person takes the reins on driving that ship, it is important that the other spouse knows where and how to get to the stuff that you guys have, because you just want to make sure if something were to happen to you, they're protected, they're taken care of.
By the way, I made the statement, just an off-remark statement, that you need to both be on the same sheet music. Because, if you're playing the bass and she's playing lead guitar, they need to be reading off the same sheet music. The sheet music that is probably very effective, that I have found very effective for my marriage, is that net worth statement.
Absolutely.
So it's one of those things, I will tell you, we have some developments coming. Too early to really unleash it, but we have some exciting news out there in the long term, so just stay tuned for that. But let's transition to this last one, is that at the end of year 2, you're really hoping you've graduated from it's his or her money to it's our money.
That's exactly right.
If you can get your mind around that, it will make your life a lot better when you really do two becoming one. You notice that's the theme of this whole newlywed concept. Let's quickly talk about the tools of success that you're going to be. These are the things that honeymoon section that will be your friends and help you. We've already mentioned this first one is a budget. So there's actually resources out there for this.
There's a ton of fantastic apps. You can use You Need a Budget, Every Dollar, Mint. You can do a good old-fashioned spreadsheet. That's what, when my wife and I first got married on the honeymoon, it was the Excel spreadsheet that I tried to break out on her. But there are so many tools that make life so much easier. Maybe you're not someone who's financially minded. That's okay. There are tools that will make that an easier thing for you to do.
Also, another tool, because remember, compounding interest is going to be your friend the younger you are. So use those index target retirement funds.
Yep.
It's not where you're putting necessarily, it's how much you're putting, so that compounding. So why not make it as easy as it possibly can be on yourself by looking at target retirement funds? We like the index varieties. You know, some of the biggest players are Vanguard, Fidelity, those type of things. I've already mentioned this one too, net worth statements.
Yep.
This is going to be your roadmap, the sheet music that you guys are going to be working off of together. It will be a great annual tradition for you to go and review these things. So make use of that tool. And then lastly, Bo, we had goal planning sheet list.
I think this is
a fun thing.
Yeah, this is so important. This is the fun one. So you talk about the finances. Well, then you talk about, okay, what do we ultimately want to do in this life together? We just started it. What are our goals? What trips do we want to go on? What's our dream house look like? What do we want to do about kids, family, retirement? Make a list in that first 2 years, or these are the things that we prioritize. And it's important because this list is going to come back later on in the show.